Battle for Azeroth is finally here, and here's why you should try it, whether or not you've ever played WoW. Whether you're a lapsed player looking to get back into WoW, or an MMO beginner considering your first foray into a new world, this is the perfect time to give World of Warcraft a try. I'm Matt, and in this video I'll be looking at all the ways the Battle for Azeroth expansion is great for new and old players alike. The changes have been enough to tempt me back after 5 years away, and hopefully you'll find something worth trying in this list as well. Here are 11 reasons why now is the perfect time to try World of Warcraft. This feels like the natural place to begin, although it's perhaps most relevant to players trying the game for the first time. It's dead easy to start playing WoW. For starters, you can play for free up to level 20, which is a great way of seeing if World of Warcraft is actually for you. And if you've played before and you're looking for a more high-end experience, the class trial mode lets you test a level 100 character for a limited time. It's a clever way of giving you a snapshot of how those later stages of the game will play without forcing you to invest all those hours. It might be a bit late now, but if you pre-ordered the game, it comes with a character boost to level 110. On top of this, you'll get a full set of uncommon gear, 4 Ember Silk bags, a racial flying mount, and much more. And perhaps best of all, whether you're starting afresh or returning after some time away, there is a tutorial which will give you a solid understanding of how your basic skills work. It's a lot of money when bought as a standalone item, mind, but it's perhaps justified by the amount of time it would take you to get to that point normally. Now, it's obviously not for everyone, but as someone coming back after years away, feeling slightly overwhelmed, I did find it really helpful. And perhaps more than this, the game itself is a more inviting place. I'll talk about how much help there is out there for new players in just a bit, but things like area scaling make Azeroth more accessible. This means, as you might expect, the areas scale to your level, so you don't need to constantly worry about the correct area to go to next. It also means you can play through the zones in any order. There are some limitations. The Northern Barrens, for example, a legendary zone I talked about in this video, now scales between levels 10 and 60. So if you're between those levels, everything in the zone will scale to match you in terms of challenge and in terms of rewards. It makes your first run much simpler, and it's a pretty cool touch for anyone wanting to explore the areas they missed first time around. Sometimes playing WoW could feel like starting to watch The Sopranos at Season 6. With so much going on, it was easy to lose track of all of those key narrative beats. But Battle for Azeroth ties up some of the more complex stories and returns to the central conceit of vanilla World of Warcraft, 2 opposing factions at war with each other. Now, that doesn't mean that nothing has happened narratively. There are some big changes here, and if you're invested in the story, you'll certainly want to see them in person. Teldrassil has been burnt to the ground, for example, and Lordaeron has been returned to the Alliance. But the common consensus among fans is that the game is going back to its roots and re-embracing the Horde versus Alliance conflict that most of us turned up for in the first place. And on top of this, the level scaling I mentioned previously gives you a worthwhile reason to go back and experience the narrative elements of the game, especially if you've used a level boost and you've got no idea what's actually happening. So if you've missed a few expansions, or you're going in for the first time, everything you need is right here. There's something about the design of WoW that has a timeless appeal, things like the crisp delineation between the zones, the stout characters, and the stirring music, but it's still an old game. But Battle for Azeroth updates things without losing what makes WoW so distinctive. This one will mainly appeal to old school fans, but there are loads of cosmetic tweaks. There are additional Blood Elf face options, for example, including golden eyes, reflecting the fact that the Sunwell has been purified. But perhaps the most interesting change is the option for orcs to stand up straight. After years of feral hunching, there's something really satisfying about seeing them stretch out and improve that terrible posture. For me, going back and seeing a previously hunched orc character feels weirdly revelatory. You can apply these changes when creating a new character, but to do so with an old one, you need to head to the barbershop. And at last, you can finally change your skin colour as well. PvP sees some of the biggest changes. PvP and RP PvP servers are gone. All servers are now PvE by default, but there are still separate RP servers if you want them. In either case, you can turn PvP on by enabling Warmode, which is done by returning to your capital city.
For the Horde!
Toggling this on allows you to engage with the opposing faction in World PvP, and you also get a bonus to experience when you play with Warmode turned on, which reflects the warlike central conceit of the new expansion. By adding an XP bonus to playing with this mode turned on, there's an additional incentive that will make it worth the risk for some, even if they don't intend to spend all their time fighting players from the other faction. I'm fascinated to see how it actually works in practice. Do you play it safe or go for the extra XP and risk repeated gankings by playing with Warmode turned on? It feels like a safer, more enticing prospect for new players, but also an interesting thing to try if you're returning after some time away. It's also worth bearing in mind that most of the leveling you'll do in Battle for Azeroth will be done in separate zones, so in most cases there's no reason not to turn it off. We live in an age of Discord and social media, so another way of communicating with your friends playing WoW might not seem like a high priority. But the new community mode is still a worthwhile way to connect with other players in-game. Communities are places where you can chat with your buddies playing WoW and organise events, but unlike guilds, there's no requirement for you to be on the same server. You can be in numerous communities at once, and they work via the Blizzard launcher, not just WoW. So if you ever need to drag a friend away from another Blizzard game to fill a slot in your raid group, communities will let you do that. It broadens the methods of communication for anyone playing a Blizzard game, and also extends to other Activision games like Destiny and Call of Duty, because we're all one big happy family. One of the niggling fears going back to WoW is that your characters will feel unrecognisable when you return. And true enough, Battle for Azeroth has seen sweeping changes for all classes. But in this case it could be a good thing. You can reacquaint yourself with your main, reallocate your talent points, and feel like you're on a level playing field with other players. And aside from druids and shamans, there are unlikely to be any further changes to classes for the next 2 years. This makes it the perfect time to try out a new class, safe in the knowledge you won't have to start from scratch in a few months' time. Combine this with the class trial mode I mentioned in the first entry, and it's a great incentive to broaden your horizons. Finally, if you're coming back after some time away and you're still completely lost, there are some great guides out there. In particular, Wowhead's What to Do First guide is an especially good way to relearn the game, and I've included the link for that in the description below. On a related note, there's more help than ever out there for new and old players. I recently did a video on the vanilla WoW experience, a dark, confusing time spent stumbling around Azeroth and tabbing between the game and Thoughtbot, and it serves as a reminder of just how much things have changed. There's now a wealth of information out there for new players, or people like me who played earlier expansions but still have bags full of useless poisons that no longer do anything. Blizzard themselves have done a lovely 4-part new player's guide, which will give anyone good grounding, and there's an equally good primer on Wowhead as well. And if you prefer your guides in video form, Bellular's playlist on the World of Warcraft channel is essential, with info on everything from UI changes to creating your character. And again, I've included links for all those things in the description below. This is a pretty simple one with the level cap raised to 120 and another whole new area to explore. World of Warcraft is now the fullest, most comprehensive MMO on the market. As you'd expect, the expansion adds new zones, new dungeons and new raids, but it's the wealth of historic content that makes this feel so full. It's worth remembering that even after all these years, WoW is still the largest MMO out there, and with good reason. On top of this, the cinematics and voice acting in the game continue to improve, so if you're coming to WoW for the first time, as dense as it absolutely is, you'll still find a narrative path worth pursuing. I've seen it likened to an open world RPG rather than a grindy MMO, a pretty accurate description that leaves those memories of drop quests and Zevrahus in the long distant past. It's not just PvP that's changed either. The central conflict of Battle for Azeroth has inspired 2 new PvE modes. Island Expeditions is a 3-man mode against 3 enemies, which uses revised AI to replicate the challenge players face when fighting human opponents. The goal here is to obtain resources quicker than your AI enemies during expeditions that last around 20 minutes. It's a nice addition that recalls more imaginative multiplayer elements, and you can also play it in PvP if you're feeling confident. On a far larger scale, we have Warfronts, 20-person instance battles that directly reference the classic Warcraft RTS games. You have to build structures and farm resources before eventually launching an attack on the enemy base. Pretending to do an orc grunt impression while you play is entirely optional. And finally, unlike Island Expositions, this one is PvP only.
Zug Zug. Is that it?
One of the most interesting choices in Battle for Azeroth relates to races. There are no new classes and no brand new races. Instead, we get allied races, variants of the standard ones with different allegiances. It doesn't sound like much, but I actually love this. It's cool to finally play as Dark Iron Dwarves, and if wanting to play with a Tauren with massive antlers is wrong, then I don't know what's right. And if you ever wanted to roll a Horde Night Elf, the new Nightborn race sort of lets you do that. Unlocking them is slightly trickier. You'll need to complete special quests and reach Exalted status with each related faction. And for Dark Iron Dwarves and Mag'har Orcs, you'll need to complete the War Campaign side quests. It's a colourful touch that reflects the shifting allegiances of World of Warcraft, and there are plenty more allied races on the way. It's perhaps not quite as exciting as a proper new race, but I still can't wait to see where Blizzard goes with it. And finally, Battle for Azeroth is the only expansion you have to pay for. The Battle Chest bundle has been phased out, so you no longer need to shell out for previous expansions. This means if you subscribe to WoW now, you get everything prior to Battle for Azeroth. It's a generous touch that could entice new players in and bring back lapsed ones. And you can play up to level 110 with a standard subscription, by which point it's entirely likely you'll want to try some of the cool stuff in Battle for Azeroth I've mentioned in this video. All of the changes have been enough to tempt me back after a 5-year hiatus, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Is all this enough to draw you back? Did you ever even stop playing, or are you waiting for more news about classic WoW before you consider subscribing again? Let me know in the comments, hit that like button if this video tempted you to try WoW, and subscribe to Logitech G for more weekly shows and features.